Hello, welcome to this new channel and new series of videos and my first videos on YouTube, I guess. If we don't count something that I uploaded, I don't know, ages ago, but not of myself. So I'm very sorry if I will be totally awkward and my performance terrible and my looks also terrible. This is me after work, so nothing nothing nice. My name is Rafael. I'm a fan of tabletop RPGs, of course, and I wanted to start doing these videos to present my pet project, which is the creation of a new RPG which aims to be accessible to a very big age range, right? So it aims to be maybe even interesting for basically all ages, since I would say 6 years old, because maybe there's a few numbers here and there that need to be, at least a bit understood. I'm lucky that my 3-year-old daughter already understands numbers quite good, and yeah, some text, but very little text, and you will know soon why. Okay, so I have no idea how to start. I could start straight away presenting this project of mine, but I think a bit of background is necessary first, or at least I hope you will be interested, and if not, feel free to skip this video and I don't know, go for the next one, which I will in which I will talk straight away about the project. Now, I was a fan of Dungeons and Dragons since I was 7, and that means 30 years ago. Oh my god, yeah. And how did it happen? Obviously it happened because of someone much older, who was the much older brother of my best friend from back then, who was a girl. This guy was even younger than me, so you can imagine this guy had absolutely nobody to play with in the family. But he didn't seem too upset about it, because obviously he was playing with his friends from I guess late high school. Like, he was that much older, like he was probably close to 18 or even over 18 when we were 6, 7. So yeah, 12 years of difference, something like that. So this guy, obviously, to my eyes, seemed like the coolest guy in the world, and I mean, he was he was a cool guy, and he managed to, I don't remember exactly how it happened. I remember being in their kitchen at some point. I don't know if he actually invited us, or he first, it first happened as an accident that I spotted one of his games, or at least all the prep stuff on the table. I don't remember exactly. What I remember is that at some point he started just pitching the game to me in an awesome way, because he was very, very patient, explaining things from the very beginning, like what's the game like, how is it played, and everything, but at the same time adding that kind of mystery and aura of expertise and everything that makes the game interesting nowadays. And back then, this happened in Italy. I grew up in Italy, and I lived it's not most of my life anymore, I guess, in Italy. So in Italy we didn't really have too much of a stigma for nerds, or at least not in the same way as in the US, mainly because all the typical nerdy hobbies of the US were just not even available in Italy. Dungeons and Dragons was one of the few. It was actually translated in Italian, at least most of the editions. So how can I say it? Like, it actually was more of an intellectual game, of course, but so basically, instead of a stigma, it was more of a you know, the current way of seeing it, you know, that, oh, you play Dungeons and Dragons, wow, you know, that's a cool thing. So yeah, back then it was starting to be like this already, even if we're talking early 90s, although of course it was nowhere near a mass phenomenon. Plus, for those of you who don't know, Dungeons and Dragons was a very low budget game controlled by, you know, a very small company back then. So, you know, there wasn't like the current aura of, you know, quality that surrounds, I think, the game and the products, at least, you know, on the surface. Yeah, we're gonna talk some, I'm gonna diss the game in a bit. And yeah, basically he really, I was really hooked. He really hooked me up, like totally, from the get-go. And you know, I don't remember exactly, like we played a bit of a game, a bit of a campaign, very short, because I mean, the attention span of kid, I was completely hooked. But you know, his sister wasn't so much, even if she did get into the game, because I got into the game. In the end, I don't think it lasted for more than a couple of sessions, you know, and anyway, it, you know, it did its job, and he did his job of, you know, marketer for the game. So what happened was, the next gift I asked to my parents, and that I got from my parents, was the mythical, legendary red box, the starter set, first published in 1983, still going strong in 1994, I guess, when they bought it to me. And yeah, like back then it was quite common for, you know, these kind of products to last a long time. There was already, you know, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the second edition, around, but you know, for a kid that would have been even more inappropriate. So I'm glad actually that I started that way, even if it was a bit of a late start. Actually, I don't want to know how valuable that set would be now, and because I don't actually remember or know if it's still around somewhere at my mom's house, or where is it. Anyway, what happened is, I didn't have anybody to play with, because yes, I said that, you know, it could have looked like a cool game back then in Italy for those who knew it, but exactly as I said, it was not a mass phenomenon. Very few people knew it, and kids definitely didn't know it, and for a reason. I mean, this box was definitely not marketed, you know, at kids, or for kids, how do you say that? And yeah, like, and it was definitely not kids friendly, not much for the content. I mean, there was a few, you know, scantily clad ladies back, like, you know, those kind of chainmail bikini illustrations, but they were, you know, completely harmless compared to, you know, anything. I mean, nowadays they would be considered, of course, very bad taste, and very sexist, but back then nobody cared, and me as a kid, I just appreciated, you know, silently the views. And no, it was not about that. Like, the least maybe child-friendly thing was the actual difficulty of the rules. They were not like nowadays rules. I don't even remember the details, but yeah, like there were tables for basically everything that you had to have, you know, close by and check. And what else? I mean, the art style, in my opinion, was amazing, because I mean, for myself back then, was amazing because it was relatable. It was, you know, the monsters, they were a bit too goofily drawn to be scary, you know, like they couldn't be scary in that quality, you know. It's like, you know, they didn't invest much into at least the black and white drawings that you know, that were inside the books. The cover art was amazing, you know. The cover art of the red box was like, became such a legend that they re-released it multiple times, of course with completely different contents inside. But yeah, but the art within the books, sorry, I thought it was my father-in-law. No, the art within the books was, you know, line art, black and white. It was nice. It was definitely nice. Even a few famous artists there. But still, you know, like maybe they did have this let's say this wish of appealing even to younger kids, you know, like the age of the Stranger Things guys, more or less, you know. And they managed. I think it was a style that kids loved, because they could even try to copy it. So wow, you know, I think it got so many people back then into actual drawing, you know, like and art in general. But anyway, it was goofy, yeah, like for today's standards it was not, you know, high quality. It was yeah, it was okay, you know, but as a kid you don't care about that. It, as I said, it actually made it better. It made it more relatable, you know. It was not you know, high art. It was not something that, you know, it was not paintings, and it was not digital paintings like it's nowadays, which, you know, you would be very you would have to be very good to try and copy. And what else? Okay, so that's enough background. What I can say is that, yeah, I didn't have anyone to play with. My friends back then were into completely different games. So with my cousins, which were mostly older than me, and I saw only 2 times per year because they lived quite far away. We played a couple of times. We played, but more than anything, we created our own systems even back then. And I was participating in this. I found it amazing, you know, that like I was already into D&D, and I noticed, yes, you can have a game basically all in your mind, just drawing, you know, the map and the situations where you are just for reference, but everything is imagined. And what constitutes the real deal of the game is all the numbers that define the characters, the numbers and the attributes of the characters that basically give shape, you know, and allow for a degree of simulation of not reality, but like a fantastic reality, but still something believable. Because, you know, if you had that amount of strength, then some feats of strength were out of your league, and same for other characteristics, and so on. So I was fascinated by this. I wrote a lot of articles about this, by the way. I didn't say it, but I'm doing these videos because nobody's reading my articles, and I thought, okay, maybe more people will actually watch the videos, or at least listen to them while they drive, like I do the recordings while I drive, because everyone, you know, basically that's when people have time. And yeah, like I wrote a lot about the fact that, about all the things that I loved of the game and of RPGs in general. And what I didn't say is that even back then, what I really loved was to design new systems. My dream was to create, even back then, a simple enough system that people would play with me, you know, that wouldn't require reading a book to learn, that I could just explain quickly, like do this, do that, okay, you're ready to go. And I was designing these following this idea that we had with my cousins one evening, in which we had absolutely nothing to play with. I think I don't know, we used to play with the Commodore Amiga computer, you know, typical of the early 90s. And that night, I don't know why it wasn't available, or we were at somebody else's place, I don't know. But what happened was, we had napkins, obviously, because we were at, you know, a family reunion, family dinner, whatever. We had napkins, and we created a napkin RPG, like where basically every character sheet could fit inside a small paper napkin, and even the rules themselves were written on a separate napkin, and then there was the map napkin, and everything was in napkins. I love this idea, and by the way, I'm thinking only now that it might have influenced my current project, because I want to create something that is even a bit physically different different in format compared to, you know, the usual typical Dungeons and Dragons game where you have a big ass two-side character sheet where you have to, you know, fill in half of the manual if you don't want to reference the manual constantly. I want to create something simpler, as I said, or maybe it will even be within the title of this video. I want to create something that is friendly to a wide variety of ages, of different ages. Yeah. So how I plan to do that, I'm thinking if to cut the video here or not. No, I'll give you a bit of a preview because I'm still very far from home, so this will be a long video. How I plan to do that is basically by making most of the elements, rule elements, let's say, the mechanics of the game, explained via emojis. I will not tell you why I think this is a good idea, like just dwell on it, and I will do maybe a video about this specifically later on. But basically, you know, it will be extremely far from the typical text-based RPG. It will be much more graphical, you know, visual. I'm always scared of saying this word in English because of the graphic, the meaning of graphic in English, which I never understood, you know, why they chose such a generic word for such a specific meaning. Anyway, whatever. You got what I mean. You know, instead of strength on your character sheet, there's gonna be the emoji for the arm like this, so you know it's gonna be obvious even to kids. Like I swear my daughter now knows the you know, the parameters of the characters, and she tells me like strong like this, or you know, heart, that would be charisma, and she does also the face like, oh, heart, and and you know, the eye for the senses, because that's the most typical sense, the most you know, straightforward one. I wouldn't put a nose for senses in general, and yeah, because it's attention, you know, the eye. That's just going very far into the project already. I wanted to say something else. I wanted to say a couple of words about Dungeons and Dragons, because I want to make it clear that I don't want to make the usual copy or rip-off of Dungeons and Dragons. I think the world is full of you know, clones. We got the most famous one, Pathfinder. The whole controversy that happened recently with the licensing of the Dungeons and Dragons rules and whatnot was basically about this, about the ability, the possibility for creators to use the basis of Dungeons and Dragons, and I don't want to do that. You know, most people say, why should I reinvent the wheel? Well, in my case, I will not reinvent the wheel because I want to make something very, very different. Like, if it has to appeal to nearly all age groups, let's say, and if it has to be really different from at least the current edition of Dungeons and Dragons, because surprise, surprise, I don't like it anymore, then I have to really create my own thing, and I will start from scratch. I will do something very different, I hope. Like, I will not, you know, try on purpose to do it. I will not swap words where it doesn't make sense to change them. If, for example, I think strength will still be called strength, although I'm flirting with alternatives as well, but just because I wanted the initials to be different from something else. And I don't remember what did I have with STR, whatever. My point is, I don't want to have any limits. I think what really screwed up Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, first things first. I love the game as a whole, right? Like, I owe a lot to the game, a lot. Like, I wouldn't be here talking, literally, without Dungeons and Dragons. No, not literally. I mean, it didn't save me from personal tragedies. Fortunately, like, I was lucky enough to because I heard many stories of people who actually got saved by Dungeons and Dragons. That was not really my case, so I don't want to say that, but what I mean is, it's a big part of my hobbies, of my interests, like, or at least it originated a big part of my current interests, like fantasy. Like, many people back then, they actually got into Dungeons and Dragons because they were into fantasy, but for me it was the other way around almost. I got into fantasy through Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, I don't want to diss the game itself as a whole, at least. What I don't like is the direction it took recently with 5th edition, which everybody seems to love. And I think this is mostly because a huge portion of the players right now are new players that came up, with Stranger Things, with the great. I was grateful actually for the popularization of Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not one of those hipsters who, contrarians who lose interest in a game when it becomes popular. No. I was actually very interested during the peak, during the Stranger Things, phenomenon. I was playing actively, much more than now. But in time, I just exactly playing a lot, and especially playing, I must say, not in the correct way, in the sense that I didn't play using a digital tabletop, which is not the correct way in my opinion, but still, it's a good way to play. I didn't play live most of the time. So how did I play? Most of the time I played by post, on forums, right? I was going to say fora for the plural, but that's... okay, so on forums, I was playing quite a lot with a group of friends. It was very crazy, a very crazy group, because some were actual real life friends, some became real life friends through this group, and just a couple stayed, let's say, virtual only. But it was amazing, and I found out that the style I wanted to portray could not really be portrayed with the rules as they were. So I started creating a ton of house rules. The guys, my players, really went through a lot to stay. If they watch this, they might be watching this. They went through a lot of changes and a lot of what can I say, eccentricities of mine, like I will tell you about this later because it's very related to the current project. But what I wanted to say is that the current edition of Dungeons and Dragons that everyone loves, so what do I dislike about it, right? If you're a fan of the game, you will be like already kind of hating me right now, because usually people that say that they don't like the current edition of the game, they tend to be the so-called grognards that love the only old school DnD, or they are the nearly invisible, nearly non-existent minority that prefer the 4th edition. I will not get into that edition war thing. There is an edition war going on, actually several of them going on. No, I will not talk about how the game was and everything. But I do think that right now the game just fails at very basic things. For example, immersion. You might say immersion is very personal, very, how to say it, very subjective, right? But in my opinion, because it's subjective, when the rules start being too abstract and too so-called gamist, like, you know, not having a real counterpart in reality, or at least in a simulated reality, in a fantastical one, they become just, you know, abstract entities that, in my opinion, detract a lot from immersion. You know, kids maybe it might be said that actually kids could have that kind of imagination that doesn't get how to say it, distracted by abstractions, but it's not always true. Some kids, or kids at certain times and, you know, in certain moods or whatever, they might actually get too far in one of the two ways, but not both at the same time. What I mean is, they might either get completely immersed but then have no understanding and no connection to the rules, which is kind of bad, because then they don't understand the meaning of what they are doing with the dice. You know, they're like, yeah, roll a die, and they're like, okay, I'll roll a die, but they don't understand the connection. Yeah, like, why am I rolling a die? Or the contrary might happen, right? When the rules are too abstract and too disconnected from what's happening in the game, they might just think, okay, the game is rolling dice and I have to learn when and what to roll, and maybe they even like it, but they're playing a different game, right? They are not into the game world. They are outside of the gaming world, like the fantasy situation. They're not there. They're just using it as a context, not context but pretext, to play the dice rolling game, yeah, so-called role playing, yeah. I don't like either of these you know, situations. So what I like and what I want is to strike a new balance that right now, with how things are in Dungeons and Dragons, like if we compare to Dungeons and Dragons, if I would be modifying Dungeons and Dragons, which I'm not, I'm starting a new thing, as I said, but if I would be modifying Dungeons and Dragons to reach this balance, I would make it far more simulationist. And now a lot of people might tell me, you know, okay, bye-bye, because a lot of people are not into simulationism. But the thing is, I think we had very bad examples of simulationism during the years. Like, I don't want to make something simulationist to the core, yeah? What I want is just for each action that you do as a player, so the dice you roll, I don't know, the number you might look up, although there will not be anything of that, or nearly anything. I want all these little actions to have a direct connection, not only to the gaming world itself, but also to reality. Yes. They tell me, what, realism in a game with magic, with dragons, with all this stuff? Like, why do you care about realism? What a fun killer. No, it's the contrary. It's a fun starter, because, or at least it's a fun keeper. Because if I would tell you that in Lord of the Rings, instead of the story we got, we could have had Frodo just single-handedly killing all the orcs, and, you know, going to Saruman's tower, climbing it, and just killing Saruman as well, and then for the hell of it, just flying into Mordor with the great eagles, and you know, skipping the whole thing. Some of you might provocatively say that's awesome, but that's not awesome. Like, that would be a terrible story compared to what we got. And this is where Dungeons and Dragons is going. Like, for to adhere to this dogma of we should have fun in whatever way possible, they are killing the fun. They are killing it, because a lot of the fun, and I remember it from when I was a kid, so I'm channeling my kid here. I don't care about what others say. I believe children say the truth. And you actually liked back then when it took effort to reach something, and everyone likes it. Everyone likes it. It's just that nowadays maybe we are a bit time starved. We don't have time, so we want to have everything in one session of the game because yeah, so cool, so satisfactory. But I think there's plenty of games like that. I don't have to make a game that already exists. I want to make a game where you work for the things, for good things. You want good things, you have to work for them, and where every choice matters, and basically where even magic has to be extremely mysterious, much more than in Dungeons and Dragons right now, because in Dungeons and Dragons right now the paradox is they try to make everything more fun and avoid simulationism, but then when it comes to magic is everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere, and it doesn't make it might make sense, but it's a sense I absolutely abhor, because there is every single character class now has access to magic, even barbarians. I swear, you can make a barbarian that has access to magic. Plus you can multiclass, but multiclassing is very fine with me. My problem is the game got to a point where magic is so central to it, because they said, why reinventing the wheel? If this effect is covered, you already know that game designers have lost touch with the player base when they start talking in game design terms with the audience. But I digress. It's already covered by a spell, so why should we do it in a different way? Just get the spell. No, because what if that character wanted to do a similar thing, or even an equivalent thing, yeah, but through other means, through expertise alone? Like, you just rob that character of a lot of agency just for a game design need, basically, or want even, of having everything centralized in a magic spell system. Why? It's just being cheap, in my opinion. Cheap on design. Like, you just don't want to repeat yourself, which it's a great concept if you're coding, for example. I love coding nowadays, even if I'm not a professional developer yet. But there's plenty of reasons to repeat yourself in some ways when you do such games, because in the end you have to think, how is it perceived? How are kids and adults going to perceive this game? If I tell them, like, one thing is to tell them you perform, you reach this effect X. Sorry for the darkness, I'm in the garage. And another thing is you cast the spell called X. Like, even if the effects are the same, it's not that just because we have the spell that we have to avoid reaching the same effect with any other mean. And I don't understand why. The only explanation I give is that they are freaking lazy, not to understand this difference and do something about it, but I will maybe talk a bit more about this another time, because now I'm home. I don't want to delay further. It was a very long commute, and I didn't even start straight away, so you can imagine. Yeah, you can see how long have I been talking. So nothing. This was an introduction. As you can see, as you can hear, it's going to be a very different game, hopefully, from what's going around. It's not gonna be similar at all to the current simulationist games, because it's gonna be much simpler, but also very rich. Like, I want to make a game where like the amount of variety of combinations that you can have is enormous. Why? Because we can, because I will tell you why another time. But and how, especially, I will tell you another time. But I want a game where you really can um, unleash your creativity, and where every character can be truly unique, balanced as well with everyone else's, because there's no, without being too crazy about it, but also without forgetting it. Basically, I want to make a perfect game. Yeah, yeah, that might sound like, oh, there's no such thing. Yeah, especially when I want to target so many age ranges. Like, I'm doing something that I realize is very difficult, but I don't see why not putting a high target. So, see you soon, and play a lot. Roll some dice. Bye bye.